Hi everyone, I'm Veronica Cowl. You might be thinking, what is a zoo person doing here? We don't really deal with free-ranging wildlife. But hopefully within the next sort of 10 to 15 minutes, I'll show you how we can be useful partners for those people working with free-ranging wildlife. Just to start off first, I wanted to introduce how zoos work in Europe. I work for the European Association of Zoos and Aquaria. We are the largest zoo accreditation zoological network in the world. We have over 400 members all across Europe and Western Asia, and that's in over 50 countries, so we're one of the most diverse zoological associations as well. Now, in order to become a member, you have to adhere to certain standards of animal welfare and safety, among other things. But all of our zoos as well have important roles within our society. So modern zoos work with the economy, we look at education, policy, public health and well-being. We do a lot of research, conservation finance, and also species and habitat conservation. And this is all on the local, national, and international level. Now, specifically, I just picked out some numbers that are probably useful for this audience or interesting for this audience. So in 2023, zoos and botanical gardens were recognized by the IUCN as key partners in species conservation. We've also worked a lot in policy and EASA. We have 2 staff members based in Brussels whose focus is on lobbying to the EU. We've been invited to CITES conferences. We've given input on invasive alien species regulations, on the positive list, on animal health law, and everyone's favorite word, Brexit. We also work a lot in research, so just looking at EASA zoos and the research that we've published looking at European conservation, we've had over 66 studies published in the last year. And then these numbers, so these are sort of an underestimation because this only comes from 20 EASA zoos, but in 2023 we've had 44 projects focused on native species conservation, native habitat conservation, with over 6,000 hours of staff time and over £500,000 input into that research. So like I said, this is 20 zoos out of 400 plus members. But one of the big parts of what we do as a European Association of Zoos is we work with our breeding programs. We have over 400 breeding programs, and these are sort of a specific focus on a species where we have a coordinator who carefully plans the breeding, the transfer of animals, and which animals shouldn't be breeding in a specific year. It's a really delicate balance of making sure that we're growing populations, that we're maintaining this reproductive potential, but that we're not exceeding any of the resources and the space that we have. We also don't want to contracept or manage too much reproduction because we could end up with a population crash and animals that can't breed anymore. So I've already given a bit of a clue on why we could need contraception, but there are several different reasons why we use fertility control methods. So there's the genetic management. We want to make sure that we're not exceeding the space that we have. We want to sometimes manage interbirth intervals. Animals in captivity can often breed earlier, more frequently than their wild counterparts, so we just want to manage their reproduction that way. And because of the way that a lot of these products work, we can also look at managing certain medical issues, so a lot of reproductive tract disease can be managed with contraceptives, and also we can manage some behaviors. So how? We are very lucky that we have various methods at our disposal. We can easily anesthetize a single animal, we can follow up, we can feed them oral products daily, or oral solutions daily. And I'm not going to go into every product, fortunately Stephanie's done that for us all, but I just wanted to highlight that none of these products are really typically developed for the animals that we're actually using them in, so we have a lot of off-label use of these products that are designed for humans or domestic or livestock animals. And what do we want? Well, of course, we want efficacy, but we want to make sure that all of these products are safe. If we're putting a dog implant into a lion or a giraffe, we want to make sure that it's safe for them and that it works for the entire duration that we want. We want these animals to still be part of the breeding program, because otherwise we could surgically sterilize them to stop them from breeding. So we really want to make sure that the products that we're using are reversible and that we can time when these animals are going to breed. But a real focus for us as well are these non-contraceptive effects, so particularly social and physical effects on the animals that could impact animal welfare. And just to go into a couple of examples, if we're looking at social effects, we really want to make sure that we're maintaining social stability because these animals are kept in one social group. It's not that easy to manage them if we have a fission. So we want to make sure that young males in particular can stay in their natal groups unless they're planned for transfer or to become breeding males in another social group. We want to make sure that possibly older males still maintain their social dominance. So we need to look at things like vasectomies in those kinds of populations. We have challenges in species that are cooperatively breeding. So these are typically composed of one family unit where the parents breed, the offspring stay in that natal group and look after other offspring. But all of those offspring are non-breeding. Now, dominance is maintained through behaviors, also through hormones, among other things. And so if we're contracepting the dominant breeding animals, we can have social hierarchy and stability. And these kind of species are things like African painted dogs, meerkats, Latin American monkeys as well. And then also what's significantly under research is contraception does have an impact on how these animals smell. So today I think there's only one study in lemurs, but these contracepted females smell completely different to breeding season females and females outside of the breeding season. So in turn, behaviors will change towards these. Their own behavioral expression will also be affected. With physical effects, we're obviously affecting hormones by using contraceptives. So males can lose their secondary sexual characteristics. So that picture at the top is a male lion that's lost his mane, which can be an issue for many zoos that want to display the sort of this magical or sort of powering lion. Weight change, as with humans, contraceptives affect weight and appetite, which is fine. We can manage that through diet. However, if we have these colony animals or big social groups like bats, it's actually really difficult to manage individual intake of food. And then also coloration. So you have a lot of species where males are one color, females are another. If we're contracepting them, they can have either localized color change, or males, for example, can have female coloration. One of the handy things, however, working with zoos is that we have unprecedented access to these animals. So we can train a lot of our animals for medical behaviors. So we can do conscious ultrasounds, we can take blood, saliva swabs, samples for endocrine monitoring. You can even train a monkey to ejaculate on command. And the nice thing is that not only do we collect this data, but most zoos across the world input this into one central database called ZIMS. This database has millions of records, and so it's actually really useful as a baseline to help understand seasonality in breeding, to understand cycle lengths, to understand when animals start breeding, how many offspring can they produce. So actually, for people working with free-ranging wildlife, we have a data set that, yes, might be slightly shifted, but it does provide a baseline for you. A lot of zoos as well have very specific expertise working in specific taxa. So, for example, Zoo Montana, and Melissa's here from them, have had a lot of experience with PZP vaccines. It's an immuno vaccine that's been used in a lot of feral horses, but also in African elephants and is used in zoo animals across the world. More recently, the scientists at Cincinnati Zoo have also been integral in developing a vaccine to stop breeding in feral cats. And their specialty, also, among other species, lies in small exotic cats as well. So zoos love collecting data. What has that got to do with contraception? So part of my role is to collect data on contraceptive use in global zoos. I partner with an American institution to do this, and I focus on Europe. We have over 1,000 institutions around the world that contribute their data to us. And on this database, we can track an animal's entire life. We can connect it back to that ZIMS database and look at when were they born, how many offspring have they had, which zoos have they been moved to, have they died, what did they die of. We can track all their medical records. And to date, we have over 58,000 records of contraceptive use, and this is in hundreds of species that will have overlap with species that you're dealing with free-ranging animals. We use all this data to understand what works and what doesn't, and a big part of my role is actually feeding back this data to the European zoo community with questions of sort of how do I contracept my lion, how do I contracept my red river hog. I then harness this data to understand what is working, what doesn't, what side effects might there be. But actually what could be useful for all of you as well is we've developed an extensive library of resources. So we develop contraceptive guidelines for the community. Barbary macaques on the screen are just one example, but we have hundreds of these bespoke guidelines listing all the different contraceptive options that there are, what doses work, what protocols work. We develop protocols for reproductive assessments as well, so actually understanding whether your animals are fertile or not. So if you're tracking whether the contraceptives are working, this can be a useful resource. We have hundreds of specialists that are part of our group as well that have bespoke knowledge about different species. We have things like gestation length, estrous cycle length as well, full libraries of different species. And we've also recently developed a course that sort of comprises reproduction across all taxa with a specific module looking at reproductive management in free-ranging wildlife that Giovanna was integral in helping with, and the Botstiber helped fund as well. So these are all resources that are at your fingertips. These are all free to access on our website. You can access it as many times as you want, and hopefully they can be useful with managing your free-ranging wildlife. So hopefully I've demonstrated that zoos can be valuable partners. We contribute and we're interested in native species and habitat conservation. We fund projects as well. We do a lot of work with managing small closed populations and extensive population modeling. We have a good idea of what is normal for a species as well, across thousands of species. We work on method testing and development. A lot of zoos also have labs that can help monitor the effects of fertility control. And we have resources as well to contribute and partner with. For example, if you're in the UK, zoos can form case partners for different PhDs, so that helps with the industrial experience as well for students. And we fund a lot of research and projects as well. Yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions, and my details are up on the screen as well.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you so much for your information. Are there only the zoos you're working for, or also parks?
It's mainly zoos. We have some rescue centres as well that are parts of it, but not really with parks, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you.
Ronnie, thanks. I was wondering whether, maybe you mentioned it already, but whether you can also track the parallel with all the methods that you are developing that we can also use in the wild to monitor whether animals are fertile or not.
Yes, so we do a lot of non-invasive sampling in zoos, and we can collect samples daily. Fortunately, from our animals, we can track exactly which individual it's come from. So that's just useful for understanding sort of estrous cycles, testosterone concentrations throughout the year. We also use a lot of the contraceptives that you might use with free-ranging wildlife, so we can actually monitor sort of on a daily level what the impacts are. But we do work with people that work in situ on developing different methods of sort of observing animals, of tracking animals or marking animals. So that's definitely an opportunity there for collaboration too.
Thank you. That was very interesting. It looks like a fantastic database to be used. I just wondered, with the database that you've got, if you think the captive environment has a kind of measurable effect on your data. So for some captive animals, the reproductive cycles are different, the morphology might be different, and to what extent that's captured in your database?
So the database, the contraception database solely focuses on captive animals, so we're not capturing information on free-ranging wildlife. I suspect there probably are some differences. We work with some rescue centres that when they use contraceptives see like a shorter duration of action if they're in a more natural social group or a more natural environment. So it's likely that our contraceptives are probably lasting longer. But in terms of those sort of like initial like dosing effects and dosing protocols, I could see a lot of similarities. And with immunocontraceptives, we very often look at the published literature that's worked sort of primarily on in situ animals and then try to adapt it to us.